When they did attack, I think it was 4 o'clock, between 4 and 4:30. I'm not sure of the exact time. We weren't looking at our watches. It came very suddenly, and it was an attack on all ships at the same time. And the tactics used were a miniature version of shock and awe. The intent clearly was to overcome resistance as quickly as possible with as much violence as they deemed necessary. We were told shortly before we were attacked, I think it was sometime before, maybe half an hour beforehand, that there was a ship, that the Turkish captain radioed our captain and informed us that there was an Israeli vessel, or an unidentified vessel, heading directly from us from the left-hand side, and that there was a lot of activity. Now, we could see nothing; it was pitch black. So we were at this stage on a high state of alert. And eventually we spotted Zodiacs carrying Israeli commandos come to our side, to the back of the boat. Now, the commandos obviously were dressed entirely in black. The Zodiacs are black. The intention was to just come out of the night and surprise us and take us as quickly as possible. However, because we spotted them, the captain was able to put the foot down and a chase ensued. We took off at high speed with Zodiacs chasing us on all sides. We passed the Turkish ship on the left-hand side of the Turkish ship as they were being engaged by the Israelis. Some of the Zodiacs on our right-hand side peeled off to engage with that attack. We saw the Turks using low-pressure hoses to fend off the Zodiacs. We saw a helicopter overhead. We heard shots. We heard stun grenades going off. We carried on past the ship. The photographers on the photographer Kate Geraghty on the top deck actually took some very nice photographs of the attack on the Turkish ship. One of those photographs was published in last weekend's weekend section of the Irish Times. And that had to be smuggled out, which I'll get to later. But we took off at high speed, and we were followed closely by the Zodiacs. The wake on our boat kept the Zodiacs away. They couldn't board as a result of the speed we were going at and the wake that was being produced by the boat. I mean, I think we were probably the fastest boat in the flotilla. Eventually, however, I think it was after... we actually shook them. The Zodiacs pulled back at one stage and they gave up the chase. Or so it seemed to us. They clearly pulled back and just melted into the night. I think it might have been 20 minutes later or thereabouts when a bright light began moving directly across in front of us. And it moved in our direction, and it was clear to us that we were in danger of being rammed. It seemed that there was an Israeli naval ship, a larger vessel, on a collision course. Our captain, Dennis Healy, slowed the boat down, and as soon as the boat slowed down, to avoid being rammed, the Zodiacs came in on top of us. We immediately reacted by adding to the barricade at the back to close off the holes that we had in it, because we'd been out as lookouts. But we got behind the barricade, and called on people to get back into the main cabin. And at that stage, before they actually got on the boat, they hurled a stun grenade, which exploded where that is from me. As I was trying to close, they were clearly trying to stop me from closing the door at the back, the back sliding door. It exploded, big bang, flash, smoke, whatever. Nonetheless, I got the back sliding door closed and locked it down. We immediately then lifted a heavy table inside in the cabin area to further impede them, which was just as well, because they were certainly slowed down by the locking of the door, but they weren't slowed down that much because they used their rifles to smash open the glass. They came through the glass to smash windows in the boat, and they came through. We pushed the table on top of them. We pushed other furniture in their way, and we did various things to impede their progress with furniture and so on. Two of the American journalist who was downstairs at that stage had gone into he was inside in the wheelhouse. And to further impede his progress, myself and one other person got into the passageway, and we crouched to block their entrance there. basically they stomped all over us, and they used us as if we were part of the carpet, and we nonetheless did our best to continue to impede them, to slow their progress down. One of the soldiers grabbed me. There was a rifle put in my face. I was told that I would be shot unless I moved a few inches. I believed it. I believed him. These guys were very agitated. They were, at this stage, they were basically assaulting anybody who attempted to impede them. This guy was really worked up, and I have to say, I was very shocked by the deaths on the Turkish ship, but the violence that was used to take the Challenger 1 was of such an extent that I wasn't surprised by the deaths on the larger ship. It was inevitable that any resistance was going to be put down violently. I could hear screams outside on the back deck where they had Huwaida, a Palestinian activist, member of the Free Gaza movement, and she was screaming as she was resisting. They assaulted everybody in some fashion. They got to the fly deck and they tasered Kate Garrity, the photojournalist from the Sydney Morning Herald. On the side deck, they fired a plastic bullet or something into the face of Greet, a Belgian girl, caused serious damage to her nose and bloodied her nose. And, basically they used as much violence as they felt necessary to subdue those on board. I think there were probably 20 or more commandos, and this is to take on perhaps 17 humanitarian political activists. Huwaida and I think one other were brought to the front of the boat where they had plastic ties put on their hands. They had to kneel down, and there was a hood put over Huwaida's head, and Anna, the other girl, had a blindfold put on her. We were held at gunpoint within the cabin itself. From the outset, we weren't compliant kidnappees. I made it very clear, myself as did others, that we considered what they were doing to be illegal, that it was in international waters, that they were not welcome on board, and that we wanted them off the ship. They didn't comply with that suggestion, but we repeated it many times. We refused to cooperate, and we basically articulated our opposition to what they had done throughout the journey to Israel. One of the first things they did once they had control of the boat was to search for all recording devices, cameras and telephones, and they stole everything. And when I say they stole everything, what I mean by that is we've got nothing back. They even took the equipment belonging to the journalists, although personally I think it's just as wrong that they took my phones, but I suppose journalists are special, so we'll give them a plug. They did. I mean, the journalists were there as neutral parties, and nonetheless, they were treated the same as the rest of us. I mean, they were brought to prison in Israel, and they were treated as badly as anybody else. We were brought to Israel, and prior to them bringing us off the boat, in fact, before we arrived in the port, we made it clear to them that we did not want to enter Israel and that we did not want to leave the ship. When they docked, actually prior to docking, I think this is interesting in terms of the mindset of the Israeli PR machine. Prior to going into the port, one of the commandos went out with a brush and started cleaning up the debris from the deck outside. They also closed all the curtains because they didn't want anybody to film or photograph the damage they had done to the boat. And I mean, basically, they wrecked the place. They would not make good house guests. They just destroyed the boat in the process of taking it, causing a fair bit of damage to the windows and so on. But that was all cleaned up for the cameras. And the curtains were closed, so we couldn't be seen.